Hello everyone, this is Pastor Max. Tis the season of Christmas. We are in the midst of Advent, the season of waiting and celebrating the birth of baby Jesus. How are you waiting for Jesus? For now, for the next two sessions, we're going to look at our faith through the eyes of Marc Chagall's paintings and his life. We'll continue our Caravaggio series after that. As we approach Christmas, and especially during this time of year, Advent, we are reminded of why Jesus came to us. Of course, the spirit of Christmas is meant to be joyful and merry. And it doesn't have to be serious to be real. But I think the question of why did Jesus, the giver of all joy, come? It's a good one thing to think about during this season. Once again, there's a well-known scripture that you may be familiar with. In Christianity, the suffering servant of Isaiah in the Old Testament is seen as a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ. And this text is often read during Advent. Let's read it together. Isaiah 53, 1-5. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering, and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely, he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Jews of old saw in this text that the Messiah would come to save them from their suffering, but that the Messiah would take their suffering upon himself, a divine being who would empathize with their suffering, not separate from it. But the vast majority of Jews did not accept Jesus as the Messiah, as a Christ, and they were still waiting for the Messiah. The next 2,000 years were not easy for the Jews as an ethnic group. That's a long time. It's remarkable that they managed to maintain some semblance of a national identity. After the time of Jesus, the Jewish state was completely destroyed by the Romans, and the people were scattered. Is it because they have maintained their identity? Well, they did not feel at home wherever they went because they did not have an ethnic homeland. They were often shunned and rejected by the people in the new places where they found themselves. In the last century, they even faced the threat of ethnic extermination. Well, perhaps Korean Christians who have also experienced of losing their country may feel a little closer to Jewish people. Well, I know quite a number of Korean Protestants who feel that way. Anyways, for Jews, suffering and the Messiah go hand in hand, and especially based on the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament for Christians, a suffering people, a people who expect God's promise to save them to be fulfilled through the Messiah. Marc Chagall was no different. Chagall was a Russian-born Jew who was born at the end of the 19th century and lived to see the end of 20th century. making him one of the witnesses to the history of the West in the 20th century. Born in Tsarist Russia, he fled the Bolshevik Revolution to France and then to the United States to escape the Nazi occupation. He was Jewish and an artist, so he had a very difficult life to survive. But he also excelled as a painter, and the currents of his life mirrored the currents of the artistic history of the time, so that in Chagall we see some of the styles that are still recognized today, such as Cubism, Expressionism, and Surrealism in Western painting. Chagall's lyrical and dreamy paintings are still well known to this day, especially in Korea. And I'm not sure why they're so popular there. Even when I was a child, there were often exhibitions of Chagall in South Korea. Perhaps it's because his paintings are easy to recognize in form, and the Jewish lament, lyricism, and fantastic colors make them accessible to people who don't know much about painting. I mentioned Chagall as a Jew, and he, like many Jews, maintained his Jewish identity religiously. In a way, it seems natural that if you were born in medieval Europe, you should be a Christian. And if you're born in old Korea, like 1,000 years before Korea, you should be a Buddhist. But in Chagall's case, he was born Jewish and lived a Jewish life, but he was also living within the world of European Christianity. Well, is that why he did it? Chagall, who was not a Christian, often included Jesus in his paintings. Today's painting, the White Crucifixion, is one of them. How ironic is that a Jew would paint Jesus on a cross. This 1938 painting reflects his life's struggles and ethnic tribulations. It was also when the Nazis were in the midst of persecuting Jews. Perhaps not to the extent that they did, but Chagall's own youth, fleeing the chaos of the Bolshevik Revolution, may have been a peril for him. In this painting, in the upper left, is a neighborhood in turmoil with buildings seemingly toppling over in front of a crowd of people carrying red flags. In the upper right is a large fire in a synagogue, with worried and distressed people in the midst of chaos, a man guarding a barrel of Torah scrolls, the holy books of the Jewish religion. And in the lower center are 7 branched candlesticks, one of the iconic symbols of Judaism, burning statically. And in the middle of it all, Jesus hangs silently on a cross. Chagall left Jesus in a Jewish garb as if to remind us that Jesus was a Jew. Maybe he wanted us to know that Jesus was also a Jew that the Nazis were trying to kill. In any case, Chagall depicted Jesus as a being that came to the suffering Jews. His suffering servant was Jesus, bearing the pain of the Jews and sharing in their suffering. Did Chagall recognize Jesus as the Messiah? I don't know, there's no record of that. Only that he retained his Jewish identity. But it seems that Chagall knew, nonetheless, that God knew, empathized with, and became one with human beings who cried out in pain and even bore that burden himself. That's why Jesus came to us. He knew our pain, empathized with it, became one of it, and took it upon himself. Even though this is a season of abundance, gorgeous decorations, joy, without the tyranny of Nazis persecuting the Jews. May we all be grateful and therefore be more joyful as we remember that the true meaning of the season is to welcome Jesus, who came to us knowing our deepest pain.